Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I have a story that still sends shivers down my spine just thinking about it. It's a story about a decision I made a single night that completely upended my world, and how a moment of desperation led me to a truth I was not prepared to face. It all started a few years ago. My husband, Mark, and I were drowning. Not in water, but in something just as suffocating: debt. Mark had lost his job, and my salary as a junior graphic designer was barely enough to cover our rent, let alone the mountain of medical bills from his father's illness. We were selling off sentimental belongings, eating instant noodles for dinner, and the arguments were becoming more frequent, fueled by stress and fear. The love was still there, but it was buried under layers of anxiety. I felt like I was failing him, failing us. I started freelancing, taking on any project I could find, working late into the night until my eyes burned. That's how I met him. Let's call him Mr. Sterling. He was a client, a big one. He ran a luxury real estate empire and needed a complete rebranding. The initial project was huge, and he was impressed with my work. He was older, in his late 50s, always impeccably dressed, with a calm, commanding presence that was both intimidating and strangely reassuring. He praised my creativity, my dedication. For the first time in months, I felt seen, I felt valued. We mostly communicated through emails and video calls, but he was always professional, albeit a little distant. The project was a success, and he paid me a generous bonus. It was a lifeline, enough to keep us afloat for another couple of months. I thought that was the end of it, but then, a week later, he emailed me again. He wanted to meet in person to discuss a unique and highly confidential proposition. Intrigued and honestly desperate for more work, I agreed. We met at an incredibly exclusive rooftop bar, the kind of place I'd only ever seen in magazines. The city lights glittered below us like a sea of diamonds. Mr. Sterling was even more imposing in person. He didn't waste time with small talk. He looked at me, his gaze steady, and said, "Your talent is undeniable, but I believe your potential extends beyond design. I have a proposal for you. It's unconventional, but the compensation is significant." My heart started to pound. He then named a sum, an astronomical sum, enough to not just pay off our debts, but to change our lives completely. A down payment on a house, a new car, a future without constant worry. My breath hitched. I asked him, What would I have to do?" He took a slow sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving mine. "I require your company for one evening, an event. You'll be my companion. Nothing more is expected, but you must be convincing, charming, and entirely at my disposal for the night. Think of it as the ultimate acting role." He slid a contract across the table. It was all there, legally drafted. A non-disclosure agreement and a payment schedule. One night, that's all. I felt a war raging inside me. Part of me was repulsed, cheapened, but the other, louder part was screaming, "This is it. This is the answer to all your prayers." I thought of Mark, of the eviction notice taped to our fridge, of the constant, crushing weight on our shoulders. I could end it. I could give us our life back. I convinced myself it was just a business transaction, a performance. I told myself Mark would never have to know. He'd just know that I landed a massive, life-changing bonus. With a trembling hand, I signed the contract. "I'll do it," I whispered. A small, unreadable smile touched Mr. Sterling's lips. He simply nodded and said, "My assistant will be in touch with the details. The event is this Saturday." The next few days were a blur of anxiety and justification. I bought an elegant black dress with some of the advance money, telling Mark it was for a company award ceremony. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth, but I pushed the guilt down. I was doing this for us, for our future. On Saturday evening, a black car arrived to pick me up. I felt like I was stepping into another reality. The car whisked me away to a lavish mansion, effedoed on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The party was in full swing, a scene straight out of a movie: crystal, champagne, and quiet, powerful people in designer clothes. Mr. Sterling greeted me at the door. He looked at me, a flicker of appreciation in his eyes, and handed me a glass of champagne. "You look perfect," he said, his voice low. "Just remember the role. You are with me." He guided me through the crowd, introducing me to people whose names I recognized from business magazines. I played my part. I smiled. I made light conversation. I laughed at their jokes. I felt like a fraud, a doll propped up for display, but the whole time, a gnawing unease was growing in the pit of my stomach. Mr. Sterling was a perfect gentleman, his hand resting lightly on the small of my back, but there was a coldness to him, a calculating air that made my skin crawl. It felt like he was watching me, testing me. About an hour into the party, he leaned in and whispered, "There's someone I want you to meet. He's an old acquaintance of mine. I think you'll find him interesting." He led me towards a quieter part of the terrace, away from the main crowd. My heart was thumping against my ribs. I don't know why, but I had a sudden, terrifying premonition that my world was about to be turned upside down. And then I saw him. A man was standing with his back to us, looking out at the ocean. He was tall, with familiar broad shoulders. Mr. Sterling called out a name, and the man turned around. It was Mark, my husband. The blood drained from my face. I couldn't breathe. He was wearing a waiter's uniform, holding a tray of empty glasses. His eyes met mine, and in that instant I saw a universe of confusion, then shock, and finally a soul-crushing wave of betrayal and hurt. He looked at me, in my expensive dress, standing next to this powerful, wealthy man. He looked at Mr. Sterling's hand on my back, and he understood. Not the details, but the devastating picture. The tray slipped from his fingers, crashing onto the stone terrace with a sound that shattered the night. Everyone turned to look, but I could only see Mark, his face pale and broken. And then I looked at Mr. Sterling. He was watching us, his expression unreadable, but I saw it then. A glint of something cold, something triumphant in his eyes. He knew all along. This wasn't a random proposition. This was a calculated, cruel test, or worse, a punishment. I ran. I didn't say a word. I just turned and ran, out of the mansion, down the long driveway, my heels sinking into the gravel. I didn't stop until my lungs burned and tears were streaming down my face. Mark didn't follow. I had shattered his world, and in the process, I had destroyed my own. The money, the contract, the lies, they all meant nothing. I had traded my integrity, my husband's trust, for a handful of silver, and I had done it at the hands of a man who orchestrated the entire, sickening play. The aftermath was desolate. I couldn't face Mark. I couldn't explain the unexplainable. I had to learn the full truth from a mutual friend weeks later. It turned out Mr. Sterling and Mark's father had been business partners years ago. A deal had gone sour, and Sterling had always blamed Mark's father for his financial ruin before he rebuilt his empire. This whole thing, hiring me, the proposition, the party, it was his twisted, elaborate revenge. He wanted to prove that everyone, even his old rival's son's wife, had a price. And I had proven him right. Rebuilding our lives and our trust has been the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It's a long, painful road, and some days I'm not sure we'll make it. I tell you this story not for sympathy, but as a warning. Desperation can make you blind. It can make you justify choices you would never otherwise consider. But some shortcuts lead you straight off a cliff. My one night of weakness cost me almost everything, and it's a price I will be paying for the rest of my life. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share. If you or someone you know is struggling, please remember that there are better ways and people who can help. Never let desperation dictate your choices. Please be safe, and I'll see you in the next video.